Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have another Mattel Jurassic World Dominion release to check out. We have the newest round of basic figures that have just released, and the very first one that we are going to take a look at is Atrociraptor Red, and it's a really cool looking figure. Again, I think this is the exact same sculpt as the previous Ghost figure. I couldn't see them releasing a totally different sculpt for this because that's not Mattel's style. It's usually, just capitalize on the sculpt that they have and release it with a different paint application. That seems to definitely be the case with this one, and I'm okay with that because the initial sculpt was fantastic for Ghost. I'm sure it's going to be fantastic yet again for this one. As far as the packaging goes, you can see again, it's your standard, especially when it comes to the Dominion basic figures. We've just got a little window up there at the top showing off a little bit of the head of the Atrociraptor. We also have the T-Rex right there looking very angry, and the Jurassic World logo, as well as the species title. And then here on the side, not really too much, just a little bit more of Rexy and a helicopter. And then over here we have a nice little sneak peek of the Atrociraptor. And then on the back you have the other figures that are in this wave of these basics, as we have the Atrociraptor we are about to take a look at. We also have the Spinosaurus making its appearance yet again in this basic line, as well as the Edmontosaurus, which will be up for review here on the channel very soon, and the Dilophosaurus, which has also been released prior in these figures. So let's pop this out of the box and check it out. And here is our Atrociraptor now put together and not wanting to stand. Let's get that leg forward. There we go. Now it wants to stand. So that's the newest version of the basic Atrociraptor. I would have liked to have seen the Atrociraptor Tiger get a release, but this one as well is definitely a really cool looking one. Let's adjust the camera a little bit, kind of get it aimed a little better at the Atrociraptor, but I think Mattel has done a good job on this one, but the problem with this one is the fact that the tail is a solid tone of color, and we have no other color variation to the figure, aside honestly from the body itself. Like, you don't see any real color difference on the arms or the legs or the tail. Now, of course, that is something that's very common, especially when it comes to the basic figures. I kind of expect it to be like that, but it still would have been nice just to have seen that paint application run all the way out onto the tail. Had it done that, I think it would have been, the basic figures would be probably some of the nicest, if not the nicest, Atrociraptor sculpts that Mattel has out, just because they are pretty sizable, but they're not super huge, they're not super small, and the detail is incredibly well done on these figures. But regardless, let's go ahead, jump straight to a closer look at this right now. Now, sculpt-wise, we have reviewed this figure in the past. We reviewed it with the initial Atrociraptor Ghost review, so we don't need to take a look at that aspect of the figure again. It is exactly the same sculpt. I can completely confirm that. I will show it to you guys here in a little bit when it comes to a comparison between the older one and this current newer one, but it definitely is the same sculpt. So all we really need to take a look at is what's different between this one compared to the older one. And of course, that would be the paint application. Now you can see up here on the face, we do have a really nice off-white tone of color for the lower jaw. The majority of it that also runs up there into the upper side of the face, but it also kind of battles and combats back and forth with this orangish tone that you can see leading down from the top of the head. I think it looks really nice as far as the way it's applied. Beautifully applied paint application because it all looks really nice and natural on the figure. It all looks like body color. Doesn't in any way, shape, or form look like paint on a figure. And you can also see that we kind of have some speckles here and there. We have like orangish speckles, but there's not too many, but I can definitely pick up on them there in the face. The eye is painted with a yellow, does have that slit-like black pupil, and you can also see a very nice gloss coat there to the eye as well. If we turn it around and take a look over here, of course we have that same style of paintwork exactly as you would expect to see, but I do like to check both eyes because you never know if you're going to get some sort of quality control issue when it comes to a Mattel figure. But the eye is painted very nicely and placed very nicely on this side as well. Up here on the top, you can see that we just basically have that orangish tone that runs down here along the body. But once you start to lead down here into the body, you kind of have, again, that mixture of like this off-white kind of blending back and forth and designing back and forth with that orange. And you can see how beautiful it is as far as the application. Like, it looks really good, really smooth the way it's applied. You can even see certain areas where like the off-white kind of creeps through the orange, which looks really cool, kind of highlighting individual scales. The arms are basically just the orangish tone. There's no difference at all. We don't have any nail paint. It doesn't even look like we have a gloss coat on the nails like we do at times. So there's no color difference in the arms. You can, again, see if we look here in the stomach in the off-white area, we have more of those kind of like speckles and stuff that you see on the Mattel figures. Again, an orangish speckling, which does kind of add a little extra color variation, but nothing particularly amazing. And then as you lead back into the leg, again, the leg is just the orange tone, just like we saw on the arms. The nails almost kind of appear to have a little bit of a glossy look to them here on the feet, but it's not super significant, not super obvious or anything if there is anything applied to it there. No real color difference, though, again, on the legs, just the orangish tone. And then we lead back up here, we have more of the orange and then that off-white kind of battling back and forth before we lead out into the tail, and the tail is absolutely nothing but that orangish tone, just like we saw on the legs. And the only thing that I think is bothersome about that is when you see here, like the underside, we have this lighter tone, and it just ends so abruptly, like it's just a complete cut-off, no gradual realistic transition between that color to the orangish tail. And that's one thing that definitely is an eyesore for the figure. Certainly takes away from the figure as far as the appeal factor goes. I don't think it's the end of the world because it's not horrible looking, but it really could have, benefited from a little extra paint application leading out under the tail. Even if the arms and legs were left alone, we just have the orangish tone, just a little extra color with that off-white leading out under the tail, even if for a short period of time, would have really made quite a difference on this. But it is still a really nice looking Atrociraptor, and again, being a basic figure, you usually get basic paint, and that's exactly what we have here. But I'm really actually quite happy with this figure. As far as articulation goes, again, with a basic figure, not only do you get basic paint, but you also get basic articulation. You've got the arms forward and back, of course, both arms. You have the legs forward and back, and you also have a swivel here in the lower part of the leg. And then the tail can move all over the place. And it doesn't swivel, but it can definitely move around quite a bit. And that's really all the articulation you have when it comes to the Atrociraptor version of the basic figures. As far as a size goes, it is pretty big because the basics usually are pretty big. For a length you are looking at, and I know they're called the 12-inch basics, but this one is 14 inches or about 35, approaching 35.5 centimeters. So again, whoop, we fell over, but the 12-inch basic isn't, an exact estimate as far as the size goes. And you were looking at a little under 6 inches or about 15 centimeters for a height. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our enormous-looking Atrociraptor. Obviously, when it comes to a comparison next to a T-Rex, this is a much larger than average Atrociraptor, but again, being a basic figure, if you have any of the basics from the past, they all usually end up around that same similar size range, so you should probably already have an idea if you have a basic figure in your collection of the size of this, but if not, then hopefully these figures will help you out comparison-wise. And then the only other figure that I feel like we really need a comparison with would be the Atrociraptor Ghost. And you can now see two of the different basic Atrociraptors. Hopefully they actually make the other two. I would love to see an entire group of these Atrociraptors, even if they are basic figures. Like, I love these. And again, like I stated earlier, I think they might be my favorite of the Atrociraptor releases we have so far would be the basic versions. Even though they are really basic, I still really think the sculpt is fantastic on these. And the paintwork also looks decent. Again, not that great, especially when you look at the, Ghost version also had that same similar issue where it didn't have any other paint application out onto the tail, but it's not quite as obnoxious looking on Ghost as it is on, Red here, but regardless, two really cool looking Atrociraptors, and they look awesome together. So this brand new release for the Jurassic World Dominion line of Atrociraptor Red is definitely another nice figure. Is it the most amazing figure ever? Absolutely not. You'll never find that when it comes to the basic figures, but is it a really cool one? In my opinion, yes it is. Again, there's very lazy paintwork on this, as you always find when it comes to Mattel, and I guess they kind of give themselves the excuse to have that lazy paintwork when they state basic in the title, but regardless, it still would have been nice to have a little bit more to it. I kind of accept basic as like we have basic articulation, like there's no articulated jaw or anything like that. There's no action features, so it's a basic figure. That doesn't really mean that we can't have better paintwork on these figures, and I would really like to see that, especially with this Atrociraptor Red. It could have looked a lot nicer with a little bit of extra paintwork of that off-white out onto the tail, the abrupt transition between the body to the tail is definitely an eyesore, but overall I still think the paint application for the most part looks pretty darn nice on the figure, and it is, for the most part as well, pretty nicely applied. We again have very basic articulation with only a few different areas, but they work pretty well, and the sculpt is fantastic, perfectly recreating an Atrociraptor from Jurassic World Dominion, incredibly highly detailed for sure. In my opinion, I think it's probably the nicest sculpt that we have when it comes to the Atrociraptors, even beating out the Super Colossal version when it comes to fine detail. So as a whole, it's a really cool figure, and if you are interested in this, you can order this on Big Bad Toy Store because that's where I ordered mine. I will include a link in the description to where you can order this, so make sure you check the link in the description. Just click that, head on over to Big Bad Toy Store. It will take you straight to the listing for this Atrociraptor, and you can place an order for yourself. And make sure you also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.